Bailey says we want the fedora. All right, let me know, guys. Let me know. Do you guys want the fedora? Let me grab it quick. Oh gosh, I might fall. All right, I got it. Don't worry. Should I put the fedora on? Let me know. I got it right here. I'll set it to the side. Let me know if I need to put the fedora on or not. Let's see. Maine's here. 12 million in revenue this quarter. That's probably a pretty good estimate, honestly, Matt Carl. AJ says thoughts on CRTD pop today, NFT news. Yeah, I think it's a lot of momentum traders getting into CRTD, so I'm not paying too much attention to the pop today, but it is nice. I think CRTD is extremely undervalued, right alongside SGBX. Borny says he's getting old. Don't tell me that. I'm only turning 20, right? Okay, everybody's saying I gotta put on the fedora. All right. I'll do it for you guys. There we go. It's on. Rally cap is on. Here we go. Let's see. This is starting in about a minute. I'm gonna see. Okay, Cleanspark's share price is at $22.84 right now. You guys can't see it on the screen, but pretty solid, really. Pardon my hair. My hair's a mess. Hat hair. Oh boy. Thomas says, how's school going? School's going great. I got finals next week, so I got a lot of studying to do. Chad West says, where's the Cleanspark hat? I don't know, man. I literally bought every item in the Cleanspark merchandise shop, and I haven't gotten it yet. But as soon as I get those Cleanspark hats and the Cleanspark t-shirt, yes. All right. Everybody's hyped I put on the fedora. Man, I didn't know you guys liked it that much. All right, this presentation is starting in 10 seconds. When it does, I'm going to mute my microphone. Every once in a while, I'll provide some input or thoughts. Again, it's important. Write down some notes of nuggets of information you think are important. But I will share my thoughts periodically throughout the presentation, especially after it.
Welcome to today's virtual non-deal roadshow. My name is Karina Tetrainova, and I will be your virtual event moderator for today's
Let me know if it's loud enough or I need to turn it up.
On behalf of our team here at Renmark, we'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today for the presentation of Cleanspark, trading on the NASDAQ under ticker symbol CLSK. This presentation will last approximately 25 minutes, which will follow a formal Q&A that you can participate in by clicking on the chat box at the top right corner of your screen and submitting a question. Presenting today, we have Matthew Schultz, Chairman and Director. And with that, I will now hand the floor over to Matt.
Thank you, Karina. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. It's been just a little while since we've had an opportunity to visit following Cleanspark's round of funding and then the subsequent quiet period. So we're really excited to begin to shed a little bit of light about what's going on with Cleanspark. So a big welcome to all of the attendees in Chicago and the surrounding areas, as well as people tuning in from around the world. As Karina mentioned, my name is Matt Schultz, and I'm here on behalf of our company, Cleanspark. Because we're a publicly traded company and everybody knows there's risk to investment, obviously I want to begin my comments with a safe harbor statement that's available on this slide deck, which is posted on my website at cleanspark.com, and I would highly encourage you to review that, obviously prior to making any investment decisions. But with that, I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview and talk about why we're here. Again, my name is Matt Schultz, and I served Cleanspark as the executive chairman. Up to October of 2019, I served in the capacity as the chief executive officer, at which time we bifurcated those roles, and I stepped over to the executive chair and brought my business partner and good friend, Zach Bradford, up from the chief financial officer to fill the CEO and president role, and kind of separated the duties to streamline our operations, which thus far has been real successful. On the screen, you see a list of 5 of the companies that fall under the Cleanspark flag, and hopefully we're going to get a chance to go through all of those today. So Cleanspark really is about powering the future. One of the things that we talk about, and we use the phrase that we provide the power of choice and the choice of power, because at the end of the day, everything that we're here to talk about, regardless of whether it's the cryptocurrency side of our business or the microgrid side of our business or the energy storage or the software, everything that we're here to talk about today is energy. Energy is everything, everything is energy, and it's all interconnected. And we really want to help to connect the dots to help the people that are interested in Cleanspark get a fundamental understanding of exactly what it is that we do and what our mission is and how that makes society a better place. So Cleanspark, just kind of for the check the box, we want to talk about the fundamentals of the company, right? So reaching new heights, we've doubled our revenue for 3 consecutive years, which is a big deal. It's been rapid growth, but we've taken a different path than a lot of the other NASDAQ listed companies that you might see. Cleanspark was at one point traded over the counter, and we organically uplisted to the NASDAQ through qualification without a big financing or an investment bank, because we wanted to have more control over the way that the transaction looked. We wanted to make sure that we properly and appropriately valued our shareholders as we built the company to support the people that supported us along the way. So last year, in conjunction with our 9/30 fiscal year end, we reported revenues of just over $10 million, which was a 122% increase over the prior year. We currently have a contracted backlog. Now, this isn't a sales pipeline. These are contracts that are currently pending execution and deployment of $23.5 million as of April. That's up 220% from the last time we discussed those numbers just in February. So to give you an idea of kind of the explosive growth that we're seeing. Company has provided solutions in 7 countries. Most recently, we've talked a lot about the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, where we deployed our intelligent switchgear there that provided resiliency through a national power outage as a result of a big explosion. Our personnel has grown rapidly. We now have 75 members of our team, and we expect that that'll be more than 100 by the end of this year. And we've made 4 accretive and highly strategic acquisitions since January of 2020. So Cleanspark has 2 business segments, but like I talked about, it's really all about energy. We differentiate those by identifying as the energy side of our business, and then the Bitcoin mining side of our business. And Bitcoin mining is kind of a misnomer, because what we actually do is we process data in support of the blockchain. And I know that seems like a bit of a mouthful. Everybody says, well, Bitcoin is Bitcoin and it's worth $55,000 today, but nobody really knows what it is. But in the end of the day, what we do on that side of our business is we provide value to support the blockchain, and in exchange for providing that value, we receive an award, and that award is a Bitcoin. And those Bitcoins are a store of value. The opposite side of our business is energy. We make multiple different energy sources work together to either ensure that the power stays on in the event of a grid disruption, or to avoid costs, or to even avoid emissions of greenhouse gases, depending on what matters most to our end customers. So in those business segments, they're split up. We have software as a service and controls, and that's really the technology that controls the energy side of our business. That was born out of a military project we did at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton a number of years ago. That project has been coined the fractal grid, and it's still in daily operation today. It even has its own wiki page. That particular project was a challenge to integrate 55 unique energy assets into a single ecosystem to provide resiliency for mission critical operations, guidance, navigation, data center, et cetera. And so out of that was born our software tools. And those, as you see on your screen, provide and deliver to Cleanspark shareholders margins of profit between 65 and 90%. We have a highly qualified team of individuals that deploy those resources, and the engineering services, as well as the deployment of those projects, result in profit margins between 25 and 60%. As I mentioned in my comments about the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, we also provide intelligent switchgear, which is a high dollar value, lower margin piece of equipment, but it supports the overall integration of a microgrid, which is really what our energy solution is. That's a combination of multiple assets of generation, storage, distribution, et cetera. And then you see on the far right-hand side of your screen the margins that surround Bitcoin mining. And quite frankly, those margins are obscene, and that's why it's so at the forefront of everything that you hear on the news lately. And we're going to dive into that and talk a little bit about what that means to Cleanspark and what that means to you as an investor or as a potential investor. So we're going to start with our energy division, and really we see ourselves as redefining energy solutions. The idea of the existing U.S. infrastructure is really problematic. It's antiquated to have an inefficient power plant burning coal or some other fossil fuel that then uses a series of distribution and transformers to deliver that to individual residences. As the burdens on that grid have grown, we've seen increasing examples of exactly what that means from a standpoint of vulnerability. There were citizens in Texas that were without power for weeks at a time. And based on the energy system there, people received power bills in the tens of thousands of dollars. So the idea of the distribution, the generation distribution transmission system is somewhat flawed. And what that really comes down to is trust. You trust that when you're going to turn your lights on, that the lights will actually turn on. And so what we do is we provide energy solutions that are kind of an alternative to that, that provide resiliency in fire-prone and disaster-prone areas, provide resiliency in areas that are less predictable when it comes to the overall stability of the power grid, both domestically and abroad. But the whole underlying impetus behind that is to increase the efficiency and save energy cost. And the way that you build that trust is you have somewhat of control over your own energy generation, distribution, storage, and use. So we have a multitude of different solutions surrounding our energy offerings. The first is called MVSO, and that's a modeling and design tool. And that really was born out of that first US Marine Corps deployment that allowed us to integrate all these different multiple assets into a single ecosystem. Now, when we secured that project, we were bidding against the name brands General Electric and Eaton and Lockheed Martin and ABB and Siemens and Schneider. And all of those competitors' solution was get rid of all of the existing solar or the batteries or the inverters or the chargers and replace it with ours. And then we can provide you software that will make it work. And Cleanspark approached that differently. And we integrated the actual value of each of those individual components of that energy system into a microgrid or a grid of grids that work harmoniously. And we patented the operation of that. So MVSO basically allows us to work with energy developers to identify for their customers what's the highest value for what their needs are. We've done projects, for example, in Costa Rica with a US industrial equipment manufacturer that really wanted a best-in-class solution for their generation. So they picked one vendor to provide their solar panels, and they wanted a best-in-class solution for the intelligent inverter. So they picked a different vendor to supply that. And they wanted to deploy a Tesla battery energy storage system. So they elected to do so. And Cleanspark was uniquely positioned to be able to model that solution, to provide them predictable returns on that, and then to use our Impulse platform to control all of those unique assets within that system, which leads me to that project or that solution, which is called Impulse. And Impulse is our patented proprietary energy control platform that allows for a hybrid cloud-based AI honed solution that maximizes the value of energy. It decreases the obligation of having a man in the loop to say we're going to use solar today and not tomorrow. And it takes the time on the wall out of the equation. It really makes those decisions based on the utility charges that come from the utility through the interconnection we have through the API interface that lets us know exactly what the interval data or the interval utility rates are going to be. And then it also factors in the usage from the end user, whether it's a home or a business. And it even measures variables such as weather, time of use, et cetera, to maximize the value of that system. And Impulse is cloud-based, so it modifies the behaviors of that system every single day to make sure that you get the most current, most highly optimized version of the solution for your particular microgrid application on any given day. mVolt is what we like to call Impulse Lite, and that's our residential solution. We're really excited about continuing to roll out our mVolt platform and our residential solution. And we're going to talk extensively about that in the coming weeks. The other two products you see listed are Canvas and Plaid. And those are communications protocols. It really positions Cleanspark in a unique manner that enables us to allow residences or a combination, an aggregate of residences or businesses or IoT, Internet of Things connected devices, building management systems, smart homes, EV charging systems to participate in grid programs for financial gain. So it really incentivizes good behavior. And I can tell you that thus far, we've now contracted with more than a dozen EV charging companies to utilize our solution for those grid participation programs. So just a bit of a feather in our cap, a little bit of industry validation. Guidehouse Insights, which formerly was known as Navigant Research, conducted a study, a global survey and analysis of all of the microgrid controllers. And in 2018, they distilled that down to 75 of the best microgrid control companies in the world, reduced that to the top 15. And in 2018, CleanSpark was at number 10 on that list. They've obviously reconstituted this and taken some new measurements, republished it in 2021. CleanSpark now appears at number 11, with the differentiator being that little company at number 4 called Tesla that made its first appearance on that list. Now, the companies that currently lie ahead of us on that microgrid leaderboard are all multi-billion-dollar companies or components of a utility. So we're honored to be listed in that system. Certainly wouldn't be a presentation without noting that General Electric, Emerson, and Lockheed Martin fall below CleanSpark. So to give a little bit of validation for our approach and our unique solutions with regard to energy management. So the factors that are driving this rapid growth, really solar panels are coming down in value. Utilities are kind of manipulating the tariffs, the time of use charges, what you pay for energy. So solar has had a massive run over the last decade. And what's happened is, in order to ensure and kind of lock in profitability, the utilities have shifted their time of use charges to make it so you pay a little bit more for your power once the sun goes down. So homeowners, business owners, energy developers have now said, well, we're gonna kind of fight back, and we're gonna integrate energy storage systems and generators, so we can store that cheap power during the day, run our home off the solar, and then use the power that we buy from the utility at a much lower rate. And we're going to deploy that later on in the day to avoid costs, but to also ensure resiliency. We can also integrate generators, and that's never been a bigger factor than what we've seen recently. When President Biden was elected, one of the first things he talked about was replacing the federal fleet of vehicles with electric vehicles. So you're talking 685,000 cars now plugging into a utility grid that's having trouble keeping up with the status quo. And what happens, and we've seen that in Texas, a little bit of an ice storm comes, and you have a different type of an energy system that they call the ERCOT. And so resiliency comes into question, and you have people that are without power literally for days and weeks at a time. So by adding generation, by adding storage, but then integrating a backup generator, you have that certainty that if there's an underlying issue, somebody has to have power for a medical reason or to keep a business in operation. The integration of that within a microgrid system is now something that is a real strong factor of CleanSpark's software-based solutions. The key to that is every microgrid must use some kind of a software to achieve optimal results. Now, certainly you can set the inverter to charge your battery storage system or to use the solar based on the time of day, based on whether it's sunny or not. But in order to optimize that and maximize the value, you've got to use software. And that's really where CleanSpark has built a moat and differentiated ourselves from the rest of the competition. Because not only can we analyze exactly what the proper sizing is, incorporate a multitude of different generation sources as well as different storage solutions, but also provide opportunities to aggregate, connect that to the grid, to sell surplus power back, to integrate your EV charging system into your home within that residential microgrid and use your car as backup in the event of a disruption. So we're really thinking outside of the box, because as I mentioned in my earlier comments, everything is energy and energy is everything. So this kind of speaks to that, and that this industry, the microgrid space alone, is projected to expand at a 28% compound annual growth rate through the end of the decade, nearing $40 billion in just microgrid software and controls. The size of that is expected to expand to more than 20 gigawatts through the balance of the decade. So that's kind of a quick overview on our energy solutions. So a couple of things I wanted to make sure that I drive home, and that is the modeling side of our solution for energy has an interface to the utilities that identifies the value or the cost of energy in 15-minute intervals all around the country and expanding to all around the world. So CleanSpark is uniquely positioned to identify utility rates and trends as well as energy mix, That's a real valuable component as we get into this next topic, because responsibly and utilizing as low of carbon footprint as you can in Bitcoin mining is really what's leading the way. So we're going to talk about CleanSpark's Bitcoin mining division and why that's integrated into the company and why it makes sense. So Bitcoin is really a reward or a token for reviewing, validating, and certifying transactions on the blockchain. So blockchain is really just a ledger of information that kind of pushes and advances the concept that I talked about earlier, and that is trust. So people don't necessarily trust institutions anymore. 4 years ago, one side of the aisle was certain that the election was fixed because they didn't trust the commission. 4 months ago, the other side of the aisle is convinced that the election is fixed. We see things every day about identity theft and fraud, because whenever there's centralized information, it's an easy target to attack. So the idea behind the blockchain and the ledger approach to blockchain is having that decentralized. So effectively what we're doing is we're certifying transactions, and whether that's voting or whether that's a financial transaction, the decentralized blockchain approach basically verifies from a multitude of different providers that the information, the data, or the transaction is verified and validated, thereby increasing trust. And it's important to note that as energy evolves, you go from buying power from the grid to adding your own power to your own building or your own home, to now they have programs in place called demand response that enable you to participate in the utility as a shock absorber, to basically sell power back to the grid in times of need, or to take surplus power in the event of a disruption and oversupply issue. The next step beyond that is what they call transactive energy. That would be the ability for me to sell energy back and forth from the building next to me, maximizing the value of that energy and minimizing the environmental impact. And we may trade energy 100 or 1,000 times a day. And the way that that's ledgered and recorded for ultimate settlement is through blockchain. So CleanSpark's entry into Bitcoin was really based on the fact that we prevailed on a Department of Energy challenge called the TE Challenge at Stanford University, and our white paper about how to properly transact this energy behind the meter, to measure, to coordinate, to control, and then to settle these transactions was unique in our blockchain-based approach. Secondarily, in 2018, CleanSpark published a press release that we provided a Bitcoin mining solution, an energy solution for a Bitcoin miner. So we've got some experience in this space. We were recently invited a year ago to provide an energy solution for a Bitcoin miner in Atlanta. Through that analysis, we deemed that there was a tremendous amount of value and opportunity there to ultimately share the energy approach that we have as an energy solution, but rather we could garner more value by making an acquisition of that facility, utilizing our technical advantages when it comes to identifying the lowest cost of energy, identifying the lowest levelized cost of energy, identifying the energy mix that is most advantageous and most sustainable, and then profitably supporting the blockchain, receiving these Bitcoins as compensation for having done so, and leveraging the value that we bring over everyone else in the Bitcoin space, and that is that we're an energy company. So knowledge is power. As I mentioned, Bitcoin mining is really just receiving compensation to process data that supports the blockchain. Digital currency is just an energy pig. The most recent data that I saw said that internationally, Bitcoin mining consumes more than the entire nation of, I believe it was Mexico. I mean, it's an insane figure. So every new miner that comes onto the system to verify and validate and prove out the blockchain,
it's Argentina,
then gets a reward for doing that process. But as each award is made, those Bitcoins are awarded, the subsequent blockchain becomes increasingly difficult. So the idea was to provide this as incentive for people to provide this peer-to-peer decentralized validation and verification system. And to incentivize somebody to do so, you give them a Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin, unlike the US dollar, is finite, it becomes a tremendously valuable store of value, if you will, more so than gold, more so than the dollar, because it's somewhat isolated from the geopolitical and financial aspects of the rest of the world as kind of a safe haven because it is fixed in the distribution. So difficulty rates go up. It costs more energy to complete that blockchain transaction, to verify it, to receive the token. So because CleanSpark approaches this from an energy first approach, it's not about just buying a bunch of miners, it's about providing the proper value and then expanding the operations. So long term, it's really about production. Cost doesn't matter, and certainly the number of miners that you have available becomes irrelevant when it comes down to the ultimate cost of doing business, and that's power. So in the end, that's what it's all about, is access to energy. So we have an ESG approach to Bitcoin mining, and I can talk a little bit about our energy mix. We pay a fixed 2.85 cents per kilowatt hour for energy to power our Bitcoin mining operations in Atlanta, which I'll state that that's our first location, and we certainly expect to grow that. Many people have reached out to me and said, well, why did you spend $100 million buying mobile mining rigs? The idea is that based on the information that I shared earlier about our access to data regarding energy mix and energy rates, the ability to utilize Bitcoin mining where it's most economically advantageous and has the most favorable energy mix is really one of the core driving factors. And you can see in Atlanta, it's 97, 98% renewable energy. So nuclear and hydroelectric comprise the value of our baseload power, with the 2% coal being comprising what they call the peaker plants, that when there's peak demand, those coal-fired power plants come online. But the deploying of renewables on site will effectively allow CleanSpark to state that our CleanSpark, our initiative in Atlanta, which in the future is going to be known as CleanBlock, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, is 100% carbon-free emissions, and perhaps even go beyond that. So we're excited about that. But beyond just that, the fact that we can now mine a Bitcoin below $4,500 a coin, all in on our energy mix, is a very unique proposition and sets us apart from anybody else in the space. Talk a little bit about our Bitcoin operations. We in the month of March, we mined an average of 1.8 Bitcoins a day. So in round numbers, 56 Bitcoins for the month of March. Since we closed on the facility, 205 Bitcoins. Current Bitcoin price when we put this chart together was 63,000. Obviously, it's up and down, 54,700 as of right now, but it's somewhat volatile in nature, especially when the rumor is that after the close of the market today, Facebook is going to come out and state that they're holding a couple of $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a store of value. So
that'll be big.
As Bitcoin continues to be validated by Square and Tesla and a number of different MicroStrategy, big players in the space, the value continues to go up. CleanSpark, as of the end of March, we had capacity to mine 315 petahash of data, which is again in support of the blockchain that results in a Bitcoin award. And with the miners that have already been procured that are scheduled for deployment, our capacity will increase tenfold by the late summer of next year, with more than 3,215 petahash, which is 3.21 exahash. I'll talk about what that means in specific detail. So when we acquired the data center in Atlanta, we had 190 petahash of data processing. That resulted in just over 1 Bitcoin a day of production. The operation was utilizing mining as a service. So they had multiple other owners of equipment that had deployed those mining resources within the data center. When we completed the acquisition, we immediately bought all of those miners, which gave us a unique advantage because they were from a number of different providers of Bitcoin mining equipment. It gave us the ability to analyze in real time, just like we did at the Marine Corps base, what the actual performance is, what the temperature constraints are, what the actual energy consumption is across the entire landscape of Bitcoin mining equipment, and make decisions for acquisitions and growth based on that data that was real world and not based on a manufacturer's tear sheet saying, hey, this is what our equipment will do. So production has steadily increased. As of the end of March, we're at 315 petahash. We're adding 30 megawatts of power to that facility, again with that same 97% clean energy mix. and at the 2.85 cent fixed cost of power. And we expect that by the end of 2021, we'll be we expect to have over 2,000 petahash, which is 2 exahash of processing power. I'll dig into a little bit more of what that means on the following slides. You can see here graphically what the production capacity growth looks like, showing that by the end of September of next year, we expect to be in excess of 3.2 exahash of processing power. Given current difficulty, that works out to a couple of dozen Bitcoin a day. So it's a really strong trajectory. And again, I want to reiterate, this is really all just about an exchange of energy. Putting that into numbers, if the miners that we have currently ordered and have in under contract for distribution, if they were deployed today, given the price of Bitcoin and the production rate, you can see what that represents from a standpoint of revenue for CleanSpark through that CleanBlock subsidiary. So at a $60,000 Bitcoin, that represents more than $34.2 million in income per month. And I'd refer you back to an earlier slide that talks about the profit margins on our cryptocurrency blockchain supporting activities exceed 85%. So path towards growth. We talked about our energy initiative. We've got a lot to discuss in the coming months. In fact, my partner Zach was interviewed on NBC News talking about what the microgrid business has looked like after the wildfires in California, the ice storms in Texas, the massive power disruptions. And we stated and stand behind the fact that we've seen a tenfold increase in the number of inquiries looking for microgrid solutions. So that results in a contracted backlog exceeding $23.5 million. We're pursuing targets that create accretive growth. The acquisition of a Bitcoin mining company was kind of a head scratcher for a lot of our investors until we really pulled the story together and connected the dots that at the end of the day, it's all about effectively managing energy, and we do that better than anybody else. Our residential solar and storage microgrid solutions, we've got a lot to talk about there because as the demand for energy storage increases, the supply goes down. So even though we're increasing the efficiency of battery energy storage systems, access to those systems is increasingly restricted. And CleanSpark is looking to step in place to create some solutions on a turnkey system for residential initiatives. I talked about the EV initiatives and charging stations. We've got a partnership that includes our partners at Rejule and initially included Ford Motor Company to repurpose used EV batteries that have fallen below their useful operation in a vehicle application, but certainly have tremendous value in a microgrid application. And then talking about Bitcoin mining, 1.3 exahash by September this year, and increasing that to 3.2 exahash by September of next year. So again, why CleanSpark? Rapidly increasing revenues. We've talked about that. I'll let you connect the dots for yourself, but I said 56 Bitcoins in the month of March, and given the current price of those Bitcoins, that's about $3.3 million in the month of March. And we didn't achieve 315 petahash until the end of March. So 56 Bitcoin at the current price is $3.3 million just for the month of March. And I'll remind you that in 2020, our entire year was just over $10 million. So rapidly increasing revenues, true leading edge technology. The blockchain supporting industry is really all about energy management. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nobody does that better than CleanSpark. We're absolutely a true dual threat. As evidenced by the research reports that I've shared with you online, we have a top tier ranking and a strong reputation in the industry, really strong momentum from a regulatory standpoint. And we've created strategic alliances across multiple different market participants and segments of our business, from energy storage systems to generation to distribution to even cryptocurrency mining. So that, again, I really appreciate your attendance and participation in this conversation. Our company is CleanSpark. We trade on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol CLSK, and my name is Matt Schultz. My email and personal cell phone is there on your screen. And with that, Karina, I'd love to open it up for a few comments or questions if we'd like.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Matt. And yes, we'll now continue on to the Q&A. Before we start, I will have a comment for you from one of your viewers, and it is "Go Sparky, lots of love from NYC." And now we'll continue on to questions. Matt, your first question is asking, Has the recent 200 million in financing already been deployed?
That's a question that probably populates my inbox a dozen times a day, if not more. We disclose, because as we utilize those funds, we disclose that through filing 8K material information statements, and those end up in our news feed. So we have spent some of that money. We're still exceptionally well capitalized. Remind our investors that we've raised $246.5 million over the course of the last 10 months. And a year ago, we had a market value $10 million or under, and as recently as January, we touched $1 billion. So we're looking to be strategic and to identify accretive targets. So we've deployed a significant amount of that in expansion of the blockchain Bitcoin side of our business. I would remind the person asking the question and all of our investors that results in currently more than 2 Bitcoins a day being produced. And at the current prices, that's more than $100,000 a day in profit. So I guess the way I'd like to encourage you to think about it is not that we're spending money, but that we're investing it, anticipating this same type of returns to continue to grow.
Thank you, Matt. And moving on to your next question. A viewer is asking, what is the breakdown of revenue between energy and Bitcoin today? And of the energy, what kind of customers are your revenues?
So that's a really complex question, and we're going to talk about that more following our 10Q that'll be filed on May 7th, and we'll also expect to publish and hold our investor call, and we'll go into detail on that. I can tell you that we talked in February about our backlog for the energy side of our business, contracted backlog, and I put out a press release about 10 days ago that since February, that contracted backlog has grown by more than 200%. We've also publicly stated that in the month of March, we mined 56 Bitcoins, and we've discussed what that growth strategy looks like on those charts. And I don't mean to be vague or ambiguous, but what I can say is the most recent data that we released is included in our prior Form 10Q, and that only includes 9 days of Bitcoin mining. So this new filing we expect will be significant in the market, and it will offer a lot of insight into what the revenue mix was leading up or through the end of that March quarter, and then we can give guidance going forward. And just as a reminder, we did 10 million last year. We gave guidance of 20 million this year. We then doubled that guidance to 30 million. We raised $40 million back in October following the close of our year end, and we had a market value of $400 million, and that predates the acquisition of the Bitcoin company. So you look at kind of the trajectory on our energy business, and we really feel like, with a $700 million market value today, we're really only valued as an energy company with a premium for the Bitcoin blockchain side of our business. And we feel like as the new numbers come out and we can properly address guidance as we come out of the free riding period following that last significant raise, that we can really give some indications and guidance as to where that goes. But I can tell you that the concentration risk, as far as the number of customers that we have, decreases on a daily basis, especially as we continue to deploy these residential solutions. The number of residential contracts and small commercial and mid-sized businesses is just literally exploding. As people, coming through the global pandemic, people are looking for that self-sufficiency and that resiliency, and that energy is really the core driver in that.
And your next question, what vertical received the most funding from the recent financing and why?
Thus far, it was the Bitcoin side of the business, and I'll tell you why. We talked strategically about growing that business, and our approach is in managing the energy side. So rather than order 1 million miners and then pay rack fees to co-host those at some other location because we don't have energy or facilities to do it, we made a strategic decision to add mobile data centers to the Atlanta facility to allow us to continue to leverage that energy mix, that power purchase agreement, but also to leverage the the really expert personnel that comprises the Cleanspark mining team in Atlanta. It may be worth noting that the principal that heads up that operation, before we made that acquisition, we had a company called BDO audited his historical Bitcoin success. And my partner that runs that facility has mined nearly 51,000 Bitcoin over the source of his career, or over the span of his career. And the one thing that we talked about is, whether it's China or Brazil or Canada or the United States, it's not about the number of miners, it's about access to energy. So we've created a growth plan that identifies targeting acquisition of energy, creating facilities that support that energy, and then just in time, as that energy becomes available, we're deploying that mining equipment to maximize that value. And once we've maximized that value, then we overlay a microgrid to decrease the cost, to increase the renewable energy mix, and to really flatten out the carbon footprint. So that's received a ton of our attention, but I can tell you, you're going to hear a lot more about the residential initiative and the mVolt solution in the coming weeks. We're really excited about what that looks like. In fact, in the state of California, with the extended disruptions that have continued to take place, there are now incentives in place that the state will step in and assist homeowners or small businesses that can demonstrate need, by allowing them by the state stepping in to support the acquisition of 8, 12, 16, or 24 hours worth of battery energy storage systems to be added to an existing residence or business, coupled with or even separate from solar and adding generators. We're seeing a tremendous move and a shift towards that self-sufficiency, where people are taking advantage of those initiatives and the tax advantages to put a microgrid on their house to ensure that what happens in Texas never happens anywhere again.
Thank you, Matt. And I have a few questions here about acquisitions. The first one is, have you allocated any concise budget for potential acquisitions in 2021?
So one of the things that we talked about on one of the slides was our strategic accretive growth strategy. And really what we're looking to do is to continue to make acquisitions that increase the value of the company greater than any dilution that may result as a function of that process. And so we've identified a number of opportunities, both foreign and domestic, for growth within that energy space. And it's really the 3D approach, I guess, would be the takeaway that I would have as we identify these targets. And it's decentralized, it's disruptive, and it's distributed. And those are really the core driving factors, that a decentralized approach to energy and a decentralized approach to data management. So it's the microgrid and the blockchain approach, having that decentralized and being disruptive in the way we do it. We're not going to be the Bitcoin miner that's going to dust off a coal-fired power plant and say it's all about profit. It's never going to happen, because we have an ESG approach to every single thing that we do. So it's a very measured and very targeted approach. We've identified a number of candidates, and we're going to continue to ensure that they support the overall focus of what we're looking to build here, and quite frankly, try and stop us at this point.
Thank you, Matt. And following on this topic, a viewer is asking, was the SolarWatt acquisition pivotal in positioning mVolt in the market?
Absolutely. So Dave and Andrew at SolarWatt are some of the most well-respected rooftop residential and small business solar guys in our core swim lane, which is Southern California. Those guys have built a brand, they built a name, they built a reputation, and the integrity that supports everything that they do is important to us, because we've always maintained we're vendor agnostic, we're hardware agnostic, we're not picking a horse in the race. We're going to support the best-in-class solution, and that really what SolarWatt does, and what they did, and what they continue to do, is allow the power of choice and the choice of power for their end users. If that means we're going to add storage, if that means we're going to add, a specific manufacturer. If they want a Tesla battery, great. If they want a Fortress battery, we can do that right now. If you want an Iguana battery, we can incorporate that. We can do a Samsung panel. We can use an Outback inverter. And so the idea is that by making that acquisition, it gave Cleanspark a lot more control, a lot more revenue recognition, and a brand that we can support and stand behind, that really represent Cleanspark's approach in everything that we do. And we can build that model out beyond the Southern California area. And that's what we really expect to do. So mVolt is really a pivotal component of the growth strategy in our business. and SolarWatt was the perfect kind of vehicle to connect that with, and we're really excited about what the future looks like for that transaction.
Thank you, Matt. And on to your next question. What type of contracts are in your backlog? Are they mostly off-grid settlements or more commercial properties?
It's a really balanced mix. Excuse me. You know,
PR
we
literally
talked
said
about
this.
The intelligent switchgear deployment. You know, we've got. I think we announced another couple of $1 million contract with our partner in Houston to distribute those intelligent controls to big box retailers throughout Texas. You know, I think I've talked about it before, and I don't mean to be ambiguous. It's the world's largest retailer. We've got big contracts there, but the explosion of what's gone on with SolarWatt and the residential initiative. I think when we made the acquisition, we gave guidance and indicated that we hope to see $12 to $18 million over the coming 18 to 24 months. And I think inside of the first, 60 days of, post acquisition, we're already, $2 million plus in revenue and rapidly growing. So I think the product mix from the energy side is very strong. And I want to reiterate, this is an energy company, and supporting the blockchain, the biggest cost of doing business is energy. So by leveraging that knowledge base and those advantages that we have in that space really allow us to use our knowledge in the energy space to print money. And that's the simple way to look at it. So, it's all about continuing to build out and deploy our energy solutions in a responsible ESG based approach. We've been disruptive. We don't look like any other energy company out there. We don't look like any other software company out there, and we certainly don't look like any other Bitcoin company out there. So we're the balance and the distribution of the variety of contracts, the concentration risk, I would say, is gone because of the variety of people that have now kind of identified the value proposition that we have and are looking to engage and go forward with Cleanspark, both as an end customer and as a partner. So we're excited about what that looks like.
Great, thank you. And on to the next question. How is Cleanspark positioned to take advantage of the Microgrid Resiliency Act/bill?
So, I think that's pretty obvious. I get teased a lot. We acquired Grid Fabric, and Grid Fabric is kind of the virtual top node, virtual end node that allows a private business to transact energy with a federally regulated public utility. And so that those open ADR programs, and that leads to, that the IEEE, which is the Association of Electronics Engineers. Anyway, they have different regulations and codes and rules and provisions, and IEEE 2030.5 talks about the communications protocol from an Internet of Things or a smart grid connected device to a utility. So we've positioned ourselves that not only can we provide the microgrid solution, we can provide the controls, we can maximize the value. If it's energy resiliency, cost avoidance, or green avoidance, we can build and manage the system specific to that end need. We can now support our energy development partners in assisting them in properly modeling and solving those solutions. So we see ourselves as a tool in the shed or in the box of every energy developer, both domestically and abroad, to provide that value for their customers. And specifically with regard to the microgrid initiatives, you talk about the fact that we're now going to focus resources on enabling distributed energy to allow people to make choices in their power to ensure that resiliency. Now with FERC 2222 that passed just after we acquired Grid Fabric, you have the opportunity to, if you have a big enough facility or an aggregate of a bunch of houses, you can add generation, and through those technologies and utilization of our platform, you can now push that surplus power back to the grid as a form of revenue generation. So what it really does is it maximizes the value of energy and minimizes the environmental impact. So we see Cleanspark as being pivotal because, different from everybody else, we're vendor and hardware agnostic. I don't care if you have 20-year-old solar panels. We can still leverage the value of those legacy assets and add newer, more modern technology to increase the efficiency, but you don't lose the value of your investment in the past. And we found that that's really been the gatekeeper between us and all of the commercial and industrial customers that we see on a daily basis, because the guy that stands between me and the decision maker is the guy that made the decision to buy the solar panels in the past. So by saying, hey, not only can we preserve the value, we can make those worth more by adding storage and additional generation to make your microgrid worth more long term. So the gatekeeper is now my biggest advocate. So we really see this. I mean, it's just a series of wins from a regulatory perspective for CleanSpark that continue to support everything that we've been saying for the last 2 years.
And now, Matt, we have a few questions here for you about Bitcoin. The first one is, do you anticipate the Bitcoin business eclipsing your other verticals in terms of revenue and profit?
You know, I think given the current economic conditions and the economic environment, we've seen well-respected Wall Street analysts say that Bitcoin's going to exceed $100,000. There are 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. Bitcoin is an award for supporting the blockchain, for verifying, validating, and proving out data. And we've allocated a tremendous amount of resources to be able to participate in support of that blockchain. Even to the benefit of our energy business from the transactive energy piece. So as people look for an energy store, different from gold, different from any other number of commodities or value stores, Bitcoin is so finite that you can see companies and people, you know, Jack Dorsey talked about putting $10 million towards an initiative to ensure that Bitcoin is mined cleanly, that there are renewables deployed. ARC, you know, Kathy Wood came out and said, you know, they published a white paper collectively with Square and talked about how Bitcoin could save the environment from a standpoint of forcing the added adoption of renewables. So we look certainly at Bitcoin as a leader right now. If you look at that data, 24 Bitcoin a day within the next 16 months at a $60,000 Bitcoin, let's assume that the $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 per coin forecast is pie in the sky. But at 24 Bitcoin a day, I mean, we're talking a tremendous amount of revenue that'll be realized at massive profits. And we expect to responsibly utilize that revenue to continue to build out the energy approach because, you know, as I've continued to say, Bitcoin is simply a reward for processing data, and the cost of doing business is energy. So certainly that vertical is going to get the lion's share of the attention over the coming weeks and months, but it's supported, and the growth in that is supported by the energy side of our business. So when it comes down to the fundamentals, yeah, it's absolutely going to create a tremendous amount of top line and bottom line to the company. But it really, what it does is it furthers the approach that we have with regard to energy. And as I've said a million times, energy is everything. And that's really the differentiator and trust, you know, I mean, that whole blockchain approach to peer-to-peer validation of everything, whether it's voting or financial transactions or energy, it really is underlined by the technology to continue to support that. And we believe that our energy solutions differentiate us from anybody in the space. So yep, Bitcoin is going to lead the charge, but it's going to continue to enhance and strengthen our energy solutions.
That's what I've said. It's kind of a cash cow for the business.
On this topic, AD, we're just sent in 2 questions regarding this topic. What are you doing with the Bitcoin you are mining? And do you think you could see CLSK mining other coins in the future?
There certainly have been a number of presentations made to our executive team, and Zach and Lori have done a masterful job at analyzing the risk reward on mining other types of coins. That the adoption of Bitcoin and the kind of validation that we've seen, we believe is kind of the safest approach. We certainly wouldn't be opposed to looking at other solutions in the future, but that really hasn't been a core driver. I apologize, Karina. What was the first half of that question?
Yes, the first half of the question was, sorry, give me one moment. I lost the question. There's too many coming in. Sorry, where did it go? What are you doing with the Bitcoin you are mining? And do you think you would see CLSK mining other coins in the future?
So what we're doing with the coins, when we bought the facility, we said we're going to keep one and sell one. As you know, huge credit to Zach and Lori and the executive team for the analysis that they did on ATL Data Center. When we contemplated this transaction, Bitcoin was $13,000, and when we closed, it was $18,000. So the value that we've received from this acquisition, it eclipses anything that we could have dreamed. So we've made a bit of a pivot. We're not selling Bitcoin any longer. I don't think we sold more than 1 or 2 Bitcoins since January. We believe that as a value store, to keep Bitcoin on our balance sheet enables us to be able to leverage that if the conditions required. But we believe that it's undervalued right now based on the limited supply. And we see, quite frankly, Bitcoin going significantly higher in the near term.
And another Bitcoin question for you. Have any fractal grids or renewables been deployed in the current Bitcoin mining facility?
So deployed, no. Engineered and analyzed, yes. And I'll tell you why. Our approach has been maximizing the ability to buy power. So to think that you could, ultimately we expect that in that Georgia general area, we'll have more than 100 megawatts of capacity. And to think that you could do 100% of that with solar plus storage or renewables plus storage, it isn't feasible initially. So we've taken kind of a, how do you eat an elephant, a bite at a time kind of approach, and looked at it with, kind of the thesis that if we're going to make an assumption that we're mining 1 or 2 dozen Bitcoin a day, like we expect to do in the next 16 months. So that means 1 an hour. So in the event of a grid disruption, the mining equipment is disconnected from the pool, just like if your router goes offline at home. And once that mining equipment is disconnected from the pool, it's then disconnected from the blockchain at large. So the power comes back on, and this may be 30 seconds. So the power then comes back on. Those individual pieces, the individual supercomputers, those mining rigs, now reboot and reconnect to the system, and the system reconnects to the mining pool, and the mining pool reconnects to the blockchain. And that may be an hour. So a 30-second grid disruption could cost you an hour of mining capacity. And so to put a microgrid that will initially bridge that gap to act as a shock absorber, that will add to the energy mix to make it 100% carbon free, and to then extend and expand that to identify what they call the LCOE, the lowest levelized cost of energy. So it may be cheaper to continue to utilize nuclear and hydroelectric with a blend of solar as opposed to taking the entire facility off grid. I think the opposite side of that argument is identifying places that we don't have access to that type of clean grid-based power, that we can't supplement and then use more renewables as we deploy those going forward. So it's kind of a balanced, targeted approach. And we were 12.5 megawatts when we started. We'll be 50 megawatts when we're done. And once that energy deployment is done, we've made the just-in-time approach to putting miners online the second energy is available. Now we'll look at overlaying a microgrid to provide that resiliency, to provide that cost avoidance, to shave what peaks may exist in that energy load, and to provide that shock absorber for potential grid disruptions. So we're absolutely in process. There has not been a deployment yet, but I can tell you that we just bought 48 mobile mining rigs that will be deployed on site. So it'll be redundant from personnel. So by having the same personnel operate those same rigs, we've got a self-contained rig that now is an opportunity to add its own generation and storage within that rig that can be supervised by the same personnel on the same square footage of real estate. And by increasing the output by the same number of participants and those same base costs, with the only variable being energy, that just simply allows us to continue to increase our margins. And I think I mentioned it, we're below $4,500 a coin right now, energy costs, and we think it can go down from there significantly.
Thank you once again, Matt. And we are now coming up on your last 3 questions here. Your following question: how will Cleanspark develop a growing national presence? For example, when does Cleanspark get packaged into a home or EV purchase all in a single transaction?
So I think that's everybody's goal, is to create that brand awareness. And for us, it's a matter of building that credibility. Tesla allowed me to use their name and ticker symbol in a press release after we deployed a couple of projects where Impulse controls the daily operations and the activity of a Tesla Powerwall. It becomes demonstrating and validating and verifying and proving what we say we can do. And we have an advantage because mission critical military applications have been in daily operation that validate everything we say. But from a standpoint of that acceptance into a turnkey package, we're still a target. I mean, everybody's seen the kind of BS short reports that come out that some random kid living in the basement of his preacher parents' house in New York writes a completely false article about Cleanspark, and the stock price is damaged as a result, and so it becomes stabilizing that approach and continuing to demonstrate quarter over quarter, year over year, our growth, the acceptance of our strategies, the adoption of our technologies, the granting of additional patents supporting our approach, and then fundamentally demonstrating how that works by looking at the bottom right-hand corner of our balance sheet and our financial statements. So we think that that's inevitable. We're getting more and more acceptance and adoption. We're working with some great partners. We talk about Tesla. We talk about the world's largest retailer. We talk about Enchanted Rock Energy in Houston as our developer partner. The U.S. embassies. We've got multiple different really highly credible people that we work with, and by continuing to back up what we say we can do with results, we believe that ultimately will be integrated into that solution. That you can add a Cleanspark microgrid with an EV solution on your house as a turnkey package with Cleanspark branded battery energy storage system, solar panels of your choosing, inverter of your choosing, and have it be just a simple seamless transaction. And we believe that's not too distant from now.
And your second to last question, can you please update us on Cleanspark's patents surrounding gasification and a potential future application?
So as kind of antiquated as the idea of gasification is, think about it this way. We just participated in a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency conference, and every single name brand in the world of the big Bitcoin miners were there. Chinese companies, Canadian companies, domestic companies, they were all there. And my partner, Zach, was a panelist. And, it's interesting to hear people talk about different approaches to energy in Bitcoin mining and how that operation is. And quite frankly, it's ironic that our gasification technology that is revolutionary in and of itself could very well provide baseload power for cryptocurrency mining operations. In fact, we've been in discussions with representatives I'll give you an example. The state of Wyoming, they did a feature on CNBC 2 days ago, maybe yesterday, and it was called Cowboys and Crypto. And it talks about Wyoming's approach to cryptocurrency mining and how they, from a legislative standpoint, value cryptocurrency as an asset and how the advantages are there for miners. Well, Wyoming has got a tremendous amount of flare gas and stranded natural gas fields and waste coal that can certify as environmentally responsible clean energy when processed properly. And I have a stack, literally a stack of patents surrounding that gasification technology. And what it does is it takes anything that's carbon based, any carbonaceous feedstock. So if it's beetle kill pine trees or waste coal or even municipal solid waste that would otherwise end up in the landfill, it can process that cleanly and efficiently into a syngas that's comparable to natural gas or butane that can provide baseload power to a microgrid. And the cool thing about it, fully mobile, containerized, modular. You can take it to where this stranded natural gas is, the flare gas, the waste coal, and create the solution on site efficiently, economically, and the only it doesn't put anything into the atmosphere. The only byproduct is a non-leaching glassy sand that has value as a construction aggregate. So we see a tremendous value to potentially deploy those technologies in the future as a baseload power source, both for the cryptocurrency side of our business and energy as a whole, rather than incineration and landfill. Use that water bottle that's made out of petrochemicals and hydrocarbons and reduce that back down to what it came from, and that's just quite simply energy.
And now, Matt, to wrap up this Q&A, we have one last question for you. But before, there's a comment. Matt, great work managing a changing world out there? And can you please speak to the impact of Biden's infrastructure initiatives towards improving grid infrastructure?
So yeah, and that's a terrific question. And I really appreciate the compliment. I'm so proud of the team that we've assembled and the forward thinking, outside the box, disruptive approach that we've taken to absolutely everything we do. And time after time after time after time, it's proven to be the right approach. I was on a call with an analyst yesterday, and he said, my investment thesis is if I'm in Grand Central Station and everybody is running towards one platform, I'm going the other direction. And CleanSpark's approach to everything that we've done has been just that. Rather than build more power plants and spend more money on whatever the fad or the technology of the day might be, we've been really disciplined in our approach that a vendor and hardware agnostic, software defined microgrid solution is really the answer, because it can be containerized. It can apply to any industry, whether it's cannabis or crypto or manufacturing. With the incentives that are in place by the current administration, putting that focus on getting away from the terribly inefficient distributed power model where you've got power plants and distribution networks and transmission lines, and you've got all of the degradation and loss, the vulnerability, the system that continually fails, and we see it in the news all the time. So the idea that we're going to spend potentially trillions of dollars over the next couple of decades on infrastructure, it doesn't make sense to just continue to plug different strands of Christmas lights together. When one goes out, they all go out, right? So our approach is to have each of those lights be self-sustaining and self-sufficient, and be able to support the others in the event of a disruption, and to create that community-based approach towards resiliency. Because at the end of the day, you pan back a couple thousand miles and take a picture of the planet. We're all in this together. Nobody is immune from what anyone else is doing. So to have the approach that we want to profitably make the world a better place, and Bitcoin provides us the value to do that, and with the new incentives in place that encourage financially through tax advantages and through federal spending, and encourage a more responsible approach to energy, we really think that, goodness gracious, from FERC 2222 to IEEE 2030.5 to what's gone on with regard to cryptocurrency, blockchain, and now with President Biden's administration and the pivot towards renewables and replacing the entire fleet with EVs. I mean, honestly, if I was to push rewind 24 months and put together a wish list that would make CleanSpark the most valuable that it could possibly be, I don't know what I'd do differently. I really feel like that the impetus towards being better stewards of the planet and doing so profitably is really going to incentivize everybody to make the right choice. And so we're grateful for the plan that's in place. We expect that it's going to continue to build our business, and that rising tide lifts all ships, and we feel like we're uniquely positioned in the space to continue to take advantage of both the decreasing value and quality of the macro power grid, and the increase in efficiency of generation, renewables, and storage, and then utilizing all that technology and knowledge as the base for energy to create the store of value in crypto. And we think it's the perfect place to be. And I don't mean to sound cocky or arrogant, but I think we've built a moat around CleanSpark that it's going to be difficult to touch.
And on that note, this concludes the Q&A session for today's presentation. Thank you to everyone who watched today and also submitted questions. If you still have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to Renmark, and we'll be happy to forward those over to Matt. Now, before we go, I'll turn it back to Matt for his final remarks.
Karina, thanks for hosting again, and it's always terrific to get to speak with you and to share the CleanSpark story. And I'm passionate about what we're doing, because my career started in the traditional energy space in exploration and production, and you look at the damage that was caused to the planet by drilling oil wells and irresponsibly handling wastewater, and look what's happened as a result of fracking. And I guess it's best summarized by as we modeled and modified our business to become the most environmentally sensitive and responsible that we could, the wastewater handling trucks had a big decal on the back, and it said we didn't inherit the planet from our parents, we borrowed it from our children. And so I think we take that approach to everything that we do. And it's ironic, or I guess it's interesting, in the financial gains that come as a result of doing things the right way, thinking outside the box, being proactive and being aggressive, and running the opposite direction. So really appreciate everyone's support of our initiative. I encourage you to reach out and call me if you have a question. I'm passionate about what I do. I apologize if you've sent me an email and asked a question. If it's material, non-public information that could be deemed to be free riding on our last prospectus, I kind of have to zip it, and I hate not responding. So please accept my apology. It's not because I'm laying down on the job. I'm just trying to be compliant and make sure that I don't share anything that I shouldn't. But we're excited for what the next 6 months look like for Cleanspark.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up the whole conference. I'm going to give a quick review of everything I caught, but I'm going to have to rewatch this myself. I'm just being honest with you. There were a lot of nuggets, hints. I should probably mute this because that's probably really annoying, echoing into my mic. But, man, we got a lot of information there. And I know a lot of you guys want me to cover the fact that they're not selling their Bitcoin anymore. Can be a double-edged sword, obviously, but you also have to think, if they're selling their Bitcoin as they mine them, they're also missing out on potential revenue, and they're losing out on that revenue if the price of Bitcoin goes higher, right? So you can think of it that way. It's kind of a reverse way to think about it. That, either way, if they're selling it right now or they're holding on to it, there's still the same likelihood they're missing out on revenues or they're losing out on revenues, that sort of thing. I thought it was, and I'll just start with the not so exciting things and get to the more exciting things, but he mentioned they've worked with over 12 EV electric vehicle companies with grid fabric. During this presentation, he mentioned our first location, and in the slide deck, they talk about a second location that they're gonna acquire or something along those lines. And then he started talking about CleanBlock, which has been kind of a rumor surrounding everything. And when he was talking about CleanBlock, he talked about going beyond 100% renewable energy. Now, I don't know how that's possible. I guess we'll find out, right? But I thought that was really, really interesting. A very, very key point is he mentioned that their cost to mine a Bitcoin dropped from $6,000, which is what we thought it was previously, to $4,500 now. So you can kind of see how profitable this Bitcoin mining is going to be. And I think me and him think alike in that the Bitcoin mining segment is just a cash cow for the overall business, where they can plow all that cash back into the energy side and acquire new energy-minded businesses, right? And then he started mentioning like Fortress batteries, Iguana batteries, Tesla batteries. And Iguana is actually a public company if you look it up, so that's interesting. I wonder if we'll get some partnership news there with Iguana for batteries. But I thought that was really, really interesting. He also mentioned at the current difficulty, we'd be mining 24 Bitcoin a day, so one every hour. Whenever we get to that point where we scale up that much, now difficulty is going to get higher, so it's probably going to be more like 18 to 20 Bitcoin mined per day. But you can still see how the revenues are just going to be crazy. I thought, it was pretty apparent that with this earnings report, it's going to be a profitable earnings report. It's going to be our first profitable quarter. I think he also hinted pretty obviously that there's going to be some guidance coming out alongside this earnings report. And again, I would not be surprised if this quarter beat all of 2020 combined in revenues. So keep that in the back of your head. Again, there was just so much information in this conference. I'm going to have to rewatch my own stream just to be sure I didn't miss anything. I thought it was hilarious when he called out the short report. I don't even know where the stock is trading at right now. I'd be shocked if it's lower after this conference call. We got a lot of hints here. I'm going to go back, rewatch this, and I'll post on Twitter, I'll post on StockTwitch, and I'll post in the members-only Discord server my thoughts and maybe some things I missed along the way. But I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover here as a review of what they talked about. But we just got so much big news. I mean, the amount of things that this company has working in their favor is just incredible, really. And the way they're changing the world. I mean, even just listening or hearing where each and every one of my viewers is from, It's just crazy, right? I mean, this company, the stock market, the internet has just brought people together in an unbelievable fashion, in my opinion. And I think it's just amazing that we're all investing in this thing, this stock, this company. We all believe in it. And I think, I obviously have a very, very bullish standpoint on the company, where I think we're going to hit $100 per share by the end of this year. And people have called me crazy for that, but I would not be surprised if the things he talked about in this presentation come to fruition. They continue to expand. The backlog continues to pile up. $100 per share is pretty reasonable when you start thinking about forward earnings and forward revenue, because again, the company is going to be profitable. So it's really, really, really exciting listening to him, and it was great to hear him speak again, because it's been so long since we had one of these Renmark conferences. I see somebody asking about the unsold Bitcoin again. And another way you can think of this is that by holding on to or if they sold the Bitcoin as they mined it, they could be missing out on just as much revenues as they would be if the price of Bitcoin falls and they sell at the lower price, right? So I think the new approach they're taking to it is bullish. I think it's a better approach currently. I'm personally a Bitcoin believer that the price is going to go much higher from where it's at right now. Who knows what will happen? I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know any of these things. But again, this is going to be available for replay. You guys can go back and watch this. I'm going to rewatch my own stream because I'm 100% sure I missed some things. But thank you guys all for coming out. I'll be streaming any future conferences and that sort of thing that Cleanspark does. This was really fun. We had over 400 viewers concurrent most of the conference, so it was really, really awesome. I appreciate each and every one of you. Best wishes on the rest of your day. Blessings on your week. With that, guys,